Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hi, folks. Welcome back to the show. My name is Avrum Rosensweig, and the show is indeed called The Avrum Rosensweig Show. It's great to have you. I want to dive right in. I don't want to waste any time here because, Ed Sullivan, you'll all remember Ed Sullivan, the great talent show in the 60s and 70s. He had, I think, Yosso, who was an entertainer at the time, on the show about 5 or 6 times. My Yosso is Nir Maman, whom I've interviewed already, I think 4 times, as well as his wife, Simone. So this is either the 4th or the 5th, but he is the most regular guest on my show, and there's a reason for that. Firstly, let me welcome you to the show, Nir.
Thank you, Avrum. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
It's a pleasure to have you, my friend, an absolute pleasure. So just let me fill the listeners in for a moment. Over the last 8 months, indeed, I have interviewed Nir a number of times, as well as his wife, Simone. The reason I've done that is because Nir has been deployed to Israel to fight with the IDF from Toronto 5 times since October 7th. His 6th time is coming up next week, or week and a half or so. He has lived a life which is dedicated to Zionism, to fighting on behalf of Israel, to fighting on behalf of the Jewish people everywhere. And let's extend it a little bit further to making people safe, Jew or non-Jew, sometimes in America, sometimes in Canada, and sometimes in Israel. Nir is a lovely human being. And at 48 years old, he's a warrior. Some fascinating things have happened in his life since we last met, one of which is there's going to be a movie or a TV series about this man, which is pretty frickin' A. Is that not frickin' A, Nir?
We'll go with that. We'll go with that. Sure.
Yeah. And that is a very impressive thing. He just came back from the States where he acted in a security position once again. He's a sheriff down in the States. And another cool thing that's happened, and we're going to touch on that during the show, and that is that he, if I understand correctly, you're going to be part of the security apparatus for some of the inaugural events in the United States. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. What is that all about? How did you get that gig?
To understand the function itself, every 4 years in the U.S. there's an election. It happens on November, and the following January is the official swearing-in ceremony, the inauguration ceremony of the candidate, the president-elect, and it's obviously one of the most high-profile and important events for the United States, and it naturally requires a very, very robust security apparatus. And the security, we'll call it, is undertaken by the federal government, the United States Secret Service, the Marshal Service, and the nuts and bolts of the whole operation is carried out by the policing, the law enforcement community. Now, they normally don't have, it's the Metropolitan DC Police Force or Police Department that is kind of the policing entity that runs it, governed by the Secret Service and the U.S. Marshal Service. And of course, they don't have enough police officers within just their own institution. So what happens is nationwide, they reach out to police departments and sheriff's offices, and they will have each one of these agencies send anywhere from 5 to 10 officers or deputies to become part of the security apparatus. It's approximately 4,000 police officers from across the nation that take place in this. Officers that come from the very large well-known agencies like the Los Angeles Police Department, the New York Police Department, right up to small little police departments and sheriff's offices in remote areas. It just so happened that I've been for 6 years now, since 2018, October 2018. I got sworn in as a reserve deputy sheriff in Georgia, and you have to be. Let me just caveat that you have to be. You have to belong to a police agency in order to be part of this, right? It's not a private security function, but it also just so happens that the chief, who is the federal task force commander of the federal protective detail for the northeast quadrant of the U.S., is a longtime, very, very close friend of mine. So about a month ago, he reached out to me and said, listen, we're putting together the detail now. I'm sending out the notices to all the different police agency partners, and I'm going to reach out to your sheriff and offer you guys 10 spots with the caveat that you are on the detail. So it was a little joke, of course, that we had there, but Baruch Hashem, everything worked out really, really well, and we're officially part of the detail. It's January, mid-January. We'll be there for a week. We get sworn in through the United States Secret Service as deputies for them, and we will be standing out in the cold, the Blut, standing out in the beautiful January Washington winter on Pennsylvania Avenue, guarding the entire presidential convoy and the event. So it's once in a lifetime opportunity, and very blessed to be part of this, and very thankful.
Do you know what you'll be doing on that day, where you'll be situated?
Not yet. The main event, we can call it, is literally all along Pennsylvania Avenue, which I've never been, so I only know the references based on the briefings that we've had so far. Pennsylvania Avenue is the main roadway that the presidential motorcade is going to travel through and arrive at the stage area where the swearing-in ceremony will take place. So the main function is going to be securing the convoy. We'll be standing shoulder to shoulder, thousands of us, law enforcement officers in full uniform, protecting the convoy. There will be various functions pertaining to the stage area, and then there's going to be numerous gala events, very high-profile gala events with the president and a lot of the political entourage, which we will be protecting as well. I have no clue where I'm going to be just yet.
Are you being rational about this situation, or does your mind go back to being a little boy? The idea that you watch these Secret Service guys and they have things in their ears and they're talking to their hands. Is there something about this that's fun?
I've been a little boy in this respect for the last 30 years of my professional career, my friend.
Right.
This is why I'm 48, and I'm still running around in a uniform, doing what I'm doing. This is what I adore doing. This is what my passion is. And since the age of 18, right out of high school, I've been in a uniform, and I don't intend to stop as long as God willing my body holds out. That's I've been very blessed to have the professional journey that I've had. It's very diverse. I've served in Canada, I've served in the United States, I've served in Israel, I've served in military, I've served in policing, I've served in security, I've carried out functions all around the world. I've arrested bad guys, gone to foot chases, protected very important individuals. I mean, it's there definitely are moments where I reflect back on all this stuff, or I'm asked to put together an email or something work related that I have to send, and I got to attach my bio or my CV or something along those lines, and there are moments where I have to pause for a second. I'm like, wow, I actually did all this. I mean,
right, exactly.
It's an honor. It's very much an honor, and I wouldn't want to live any other life. I'm very grateful to Hashem for making me who I am and allowing me this destiny pathway that I've been on. And I hope it can continue for another, 20, 30 years at least.
Amen. Is there a secret that you harbor, that you have, as to how to see, how to watch? You'll be standing on Pennsylvania Avenue. You'll be at an inaugural event. When we watch the Secret Service guys, they're looking around, and their sight, their vision is like blazing in the direction that they're going. Are you taught how to see?
Absolutely. That's an excellent question. And this actually hits right into the heart of, excuse me, what I do for a living, not just in, being one who has to be in the crowd and see and observe and try to identify the ill-intended person, individual threat, but also one who has spent over 20, 25 years teaching professionals on how to be the ones that can spot the threat. And so there very much is, it's a combination of a science plus an art craft to it, and a lot of experience and a little sprinkling of luck, as is with anything. I guess without compromising too much, and with trying to just make it a very brief overview so that we can actually answer the question thoroughly for everybody who's joining us. It really all boils down to the psychology of the matter. The reason why we are able to identify a threat is because the threat is also going to be human. So the means, right? You have the means to carry out the threat or the attack, and that could be a knife, it could be a gun, it could be a suicide bomber, it could be a grenade, it could be any number of things that can cause injury. But behind it all will always be a human, meaning a human mind that is carried in a body that is going to be controlling that means. And that's the first thing that you have to understand, is how the mind works. And that will automatically allow you to start to pick things out that are, anomalies or abnormalities in a crowd. When you have a crowd of thousands of people, the majority of all people are good. The majority of all the people are going to be there for the same reason. Now, there could be several reasons. You could have a large amount of the population there that are supporters of the president and are there to cheer on and be part of this, historical event. There might be another big part of the population that don't support this president and that want to come and, at minimum, voice their disdain for the political aspect of all this. But both of those groups are going to be uniform and congruent with what they're all doing. When you look to the right and you see all the people who are there to support the president, they're all going to look the same, say the same things. They're going to face in the same direction. Their actions will be the same. Their emotions will be the same, of course, with variances. But then you look to the left and you see, let's just say, the crowd that is not in favor of politics, of the event, of the president, of what have you, and they're going to have the exact same presentation. They're going to look the same. They're going to be saying the same things. They're going to be behaving in the same way. That uniformity, that human nature, that congruency is what allows you to create a baseline of what will then stand out. If we have somebody there that wants to, God forbid, do harm to the president, they're going to try to look the same. That's a given. They will most likely try to blend into the environment, but because their intent is different, their behavior is going to be different. No matter how hard a human tries to conceal their intent, or their behavior, I should say, their intent is always going to seep through. So, you might have somebody whose appearance will be very different because they're trying to conceal a weapon. They might have much bulkier clothing. They might have a lot more layers on them. They might have different type of shoes that's going to facilitate them running instead of standing, at an event cheering. They might have, I don't know, something to cover their face, for example. But through all of that, no matter how much they try to adhere to what their motive is in that moment, the action that they're going to carry out, they're going to have to get close to the president, depending on what their means is, right? If you have a sniper, it's suffice to say he can be on a rooftop a kilometer away. If all the attacker has is a handgun or a knife, for example, he is going to have to breach as much of the protective layers and get as close to the president as possible to be effective. So within all that, you will have a human who knows that they are not there, even though they're standing in one of those crowds that I described. They know that their intent is different, and they're focused on that intent. So their behavior is going to be different. Their appearance might be different, and then their actions are going to be different. They might stay in the crowd, pretend to be cheering until the convoy, as an example, gets close, and all of a sudden there'll be a switch in their behavior, because for them now it's go time. Now the opportunity is here. So as the professional, the security professional that is responsible to protect, in this case, the president, we don't sit there and try to get caught up in the norm. We try to find the abnormality. Who is different in terms of appearance, behavior, action? Is there a variance, I should say, in the congruent? They are not congruent in terms of all of the three ingredients that I just mentioned: appearance, behavior, and action. And that's what you look for. It's a lot of work. It's like finding Waldo. You got to really sit there and you have to really analyze and assess, and that becomes difficult because you yourself are human. We are going to be up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning to go to our debrief, grab our coffee, and go to our post. And we are going to be standing on post all day long, for a good 12, 13, 14, 15 hours. That's going to take a toll as a human. There's only so much that you can have your eyes working, scanning, collecting, processing data before you start to get fatigued, mentally fatigued, physically fatigued. So that's where the professionalism of it comes in. That is where you have to keep on reminding yourself of what your job is. Let me actually, just an example that came to mind right now, because this actually is a subject matter that I've been teaching for a long time. I teach police officers, security officers, intelligence people, and how to recognizing, even for example, a suicide bomber. And if you look at the Boston Marathon bombings that occurred, there's a photograph from that event that I use in the presentation of this course. And that photograph, if you'll envision, you've got the roadway where all the runners were running, and I was on one side of the street and you were on the other side of the street. It's a photograph that was captured from my side, the opposite side of the street. And you have the barricades, you have a swarm of people, all the observers, all of the the fans that came to watch the marathon. And then you have a police officer, full uniform, in a high visibility vest, who is standing there, essentially tasked with exactly what I'm going to be tasked with on the inauguration ceremony. And right over the shoulder of the police officer were the two bombers, the brothers, who were standing there and watching. And this is as they were moving through the crowd, and they were trying to pinpoint the exact location where to place that pressure cooker bomb before they walked away. And so you've got this police officer standing there, the two bombers together right over his shoulder. And why do we use this picture? Because specifically in this in that snapshot of that moment, the police officer has his back to the crowd on his side, and he is watching the race. That is the human element of his disposition taking over. It's probably very implausible that one of the marathon contestants, runners, was going to be the one who's going to carry out the attack. The automatic reasoning would be that it would be somebody in the crowd, or a threat hiding within the crowd.
Behind him.
Here he is facing the event. While he's facing the event, enjoying the event, presumably, in a reactive mindset, which happens a lot. A lot of people have the tendency to get complacent, and they wait for something to happen. Mm-hmm. And that's okay if you have a fight that breaks out. But when a bomb goes off, you don't get that. That transition is instant. It's life to death. It's instant. You have nothing to react to anymore. So he's waiting for a reaction, and the bombers are right behind him, looking in the same direction because their target was the race. He's enjoying the race, and they are analyzing the race in preparation for carrying out the attack. He should have been turned around and constantly scanning the crowd to pick up there's a whole list of indicators that we teach that help us to potentially identify a problem that's about to happen, an impending attack, or anything along those lines. So it's kind of ironic, right? But that's in a nutshell. That's what it's all about.
That's how you see, right?
Yes, exactly.
The old adage, or what we hear in movies and otherwise, as to the job of Secret Service security for the president, is that they're there to save his life, and they will take a bullet for the president. Is that why you're doing this?
Well, I'm doing this because this is my work. This is my passion. This is what I've always been doing. From day one that I decided to put on a uniform, even at 18 years old, I've worn police uniforms, security guard uniforms, soldier uniforms. For me, it wasn't about who can I go and take a bullet for. For me, it was about, I want to be there to protect the innocent, and I want to be the one to face evil and stop evil. Any number of things can happen. I've been shot at in over the course of these 30 years. I've had bullets zing literally right by my head. That is not what I signed up to do. That is not what anybody in our profession signs up to do. You don't sign up to get killed. We have families, we have lives, we love the gift of life, we want to continue, but we are drawn to this line of work. We hope to be the best trained that we can, and to be the most competent and capable of being able to apply our knowledge and our skills. And God forbid, if we encounter a life or death situation, whether it's directed at us, whether it's directed at somebody that we are there to protect, we hope to be able to respond within the totality of everything that we've been trained to do. And every one of us prays that the outcome will be that whoever we are charged with protecting is safe and alive, that we are safe and alive to go back home to our families, and that the evil, the threat, is incapacitated or no longer able to carry out their threat. Unfortunately, and specifically, if we talk about, for example, Secret Service or Unit 730, which is the Israel's version counterpart of the Secret Service, the fact of the matter is that everybody that's in these high political positions, they're a target one way or the other. It doesn't matter left, right, center, what group. I mean, it's just the way the world goes. There isn't a single person out there in all of history who has had nothing but fans. Everybody's got their fans. Everybody has their enemies for one reason or another. And so when you have this, excuse me, in this case, this individual who has enemies out there, and in many cases, these enemies are determined to harm this individual, maybe even kill them, you're kind of always swimming in that water with that individual. You're the closest to them. If a threat's going to pop out of a crowd and try to shoot this individual, you are going to be as close to those bullets as your protectee is. So, that is something that you accept. It's why you have decided to be in this line of work. But again, it's not, it is a very honorable thought that, yes, are we willing to take a bullet for another person that we're responsible for? Listen, if I'm walking down the street and I'm with my wife or my kids, and God forbid some evil individual comes to try to harm them, I will take whatever that individual is trying to impose on them for them. That doesn't change. So, it's the same concept.
Have you taken a bullet yourself?
Ironically, yes and no. And let me explain.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So I have, it was about a week or two ago. I'm going through a bunch of old boxes. I have my whole life is in boxes, and I was looking for something, and I'm digging up things, and I have this Tupperware box, a lot of things from a very long time ago, 20 years ago. And I found a bullet. Okay. And this bullet is the only bullet in life, thank God, and may it always be this way,
Amen.
that has actually connected with me and specifically hit me right here in the head. Now, let's contextualize. I'm fine. It happened again in sometime around 2003 or 2004. I was a sworn police officer here in Canada, and we were running training. We were on a shooting range, running training for a series of recruits. And this range was an older range. The way it was constructed and the material that the backstop. So the backstop is the far wall that you put targets in front of that wall, and then you shoot towards that wall. You're shooting targets are in front of that wall, and that backstop is supposed to catch those bullets as they traverse through the target. And it's supposed to, be a permanent resting spot for those bullets. This particular range was notorious for sending some of these rounds back, ricochets. When they would hit at a certain angle, they would fly back. And it would happen one every, several hundred, 1,000 rounds, something like that. It was common, but it was still a rare occurrence there. And once in a while, you would actually, you might feel a bullet, a ricochet hit you in the leg. You might see it happening to others. It would kind of register as it's happening. But these bullets, when they leave the firearm, right? In this case, it was 38 special revolvers, which were among the most common type of revolvers in policing and security until they transitioned to the more higher-powered semi-automatic pistols. And these bullets, plus or minus, they leave the barrel, the muzzle of the weapon, at around 1,000 feet per second, which is a lot of energy, right? And you have this little piece of metal, and when it leaves the muzzle and it connects with its intended target, that energy is only interrupted by the natural dissipation of the energy as it's traveling, right? As it goes, it has no more, there's an explosion that happens in the gun that sends the bullet out. So you got all that energy, and as it's traveling, naturally, gravity takes over, the bullet starts to drop, and it starts to lose its velocity or its kinetic energy, but it'll still have enough to impact, if it impacts a person, to cause a great deal amount of damage, even lethal damage. Every time a round travels through an obstacle, it could be a cardboard target or something thicker, or if it especially hits, for example, a wall and bounces back, it has a tremendous amount of its energy that is taken away from it. Mm-hmm. So that's the one thing. When it hit me, it obviously didn't hit me at 1,000 feet per second. I don't know to tell you how many feet per second it hit, but with that, when this bullet leaves, it's in its perfect little form of a bullet. When it impacts, especially a hard surface, it deforms. So in this particular case, and I'll send you the picture so you'll see it. You have this little piece of metal that hits this hard cement wall, and it essentially crumples, turns into almost looking like a ninja star. It frays out, the edges fray out, and it's very sharp. So as that happened, it also now gets sent back. Now I remember, it was very fascinating because, again, it goes back to the psychology and physiology of the human mind.
Yes.
Everything that we do in life as humans, it's based on pattern recognition. Everything that we do, when we are walking down the street, we're about to turn a corner, we already build a picture in our mind of what to expect because we've done it so many times. If it's your first time in life turning a corner, you're going to stop and you're going to think about it and you're going to use your eyes and you're going to try to take it in increments and try to process and analyze. So everything is based on this pattern recognition. And it's almost like, a calm pond, a body of water that's very, very still until you throw a rock in it. And all of a sudden there's a splash and there's a ripple effect. So our daily routines in life are this calm, still body of water because nothing is different. We've recognized everything, so nothing changes. We as humans have, some will argue 5 senses, some will argue 6 senses, which I do believe that we have 6 senses, right? But these senses, sight, taste, smell, hearing, touch, these are radar systems. They're not so that we can take an orange and enjoy it. They are so we can recognize that it's an orange, whether by looking at it, by feeling it, or by tasting it, so that we know that it's safe for us to eat it. We can find it and then know that it's safe for us to eat it. These are your radar systems. Now, your mind is also divided up into a cognitive mind and a subconscious instinctive mind. We do everything based on cognition, right? So the cognitive mind sees a piece of data. The radar, maybe it's the eyes, maybe I'm looking at it and I right away process it. I send that to my mind. This is what I'm seeing. And the mind analyzes it and tells me what it is. And then if there's a follow-up action, such as I want to reach down and pick up this orange, my mind will now send that message through my nerves to cause the muscles to contract, to move our skeletal structure to do the action. When we have repeated something so many times that we know we can do it without thinking about it, such as walking. You remember when we first learned how to walk as babies, or when you watch babies today learn how to walk, what happens? They don't just do it naturally. And they most certainly, even if they're holding a toy in their hand, they're no longer playing with it. They have to think about what they're doing. They have to feel every step. They have to understand what balance is. And this is what goes on until the moment comes that they have practiced that enough times that they no longer have to think about it when they do it. Oh. And you and me, for example, we can walk down the street, we can take step after step, and we can be on our phone, we can text, we can do whatever, because we no longer have to attach our cognitive mind to the physical action. It's now instinctive, right? Or it's subconscious. So when we go through this pattern recognition, this equation of reaction, we perceive something, we then have to analyze what it is, decide what we want to do about it, and then do it. That is our equation of reaction. When that equation is interrupted because of stress, because we don't have enough time to go through those 4 steps, we panic. Conscious mind shuts down, and it kicks everything over to our subconscious mind to say, you handle this. Okay, I don't know what's going on right now. I can't process, I can't think, so you handle it. You ever heard that term? Some people, when they've been in a life and death situation, they say, I saw my life flash in front of my eyes.
Yes.
So that is a very specific survival mechanism. It's not that your mind is saying, well, we're about to die now. Let's, for old time's sake, go back, look at the album and see all the good times we've had. What's actually happening there is your conscious mind can no longer analyze what's going on. It's overloaded, like a computer that's frozen because it's running too many applications. Mm-hmm. Your subconscious mind takes over. Your subconscious mind doesn't know how to think. It only knows to recognize and act, recognize and react. So what it's doing now is, in a fraction, milliseconds, it scans every single second of your life to identify when you were ever in a similar situation, what you did to survive then, so it can take that plan and make your body act on that. So going back to my situation and this encounter with this bullet, I'm standing on the line. I have this female recruit, much shorter than me. She's standing in front of me, and she's shooting, working on the drill that we were teaching them. And I was maybe about, I think, plus or minus 20 yards away from the backstop. And I'm watching her shooting as an instructor. It's what I'm there to do, right? And I'm watching where she's hitting. And out of nowhere, in between her hand and her gun and the target, I remember my mind suddenly picking up a rapid change in the environment. Something was floating in the air. And that is, remember I talked about a still body of water, and all of a sudden that disruption all of a sudden happened. Something was very different. My brain recognized that the pattern that I was used to seeing, that was imprinted in my brain right now, was suddenly disrupted. I just saw something floating in the air. And I very crisply even remember, my eyes were honing in on it. I couldn't identify what it was, but I remember I was about to say, what the hell is that? And I got to, what the? And boom, hits me right in the head. Now, this thing appeared to be floating. Why? Because I'm on what's called zero perception. It's flying towards me, right? So if we were standing at a distance from one another and I had a ball and I whipped it at your face, there'd be no change. The size would change, but it would happen so fast that by the time, you can even begin to understand what it is, it would probably hit you. Whereas if you're standing where you are and I'm perpendicular to you and I throw a ball, no matter how fast, you'd be able to see that ball travel its whole duration, right? So I was on zero perception with this bullet, and I could just see something floating, and a fraction of a second, like a ninja star, it gets stuck right here, hits me right here. Blood starts to pour down. I'm like, wow. And right away, and I went from trying to figure out what that was, to immediately teleporting to knowing I just got hit by a ricochet. Right, so I pulled it out. My phone came running up. Fortunately, it wasn't. It was okay. It hit Thank God it didn't hit. I mean, again, we were wearing protective eyewear and everything. It didn't hit anywhere vital. It's all just skin tissue, fat tissue, and nice hard part of the skull here, right? I bandaged it up, went to the hospital. I think it was three stitches, if I remember correctly, 3, maybe 4 stitches. And that was the end of that. But I picked up the bullet and put it in my pocket. I kept it, and I just found it like 2 weeks ago. So that was the only time that I was shot, and God willing, that'll be the only time.
Yeah, God willing is right. Nir Maman, with all the training and the sophistication of your thinking and the theoretics and the planning and all that tapestry that you're trying to see as life goes on, can you sit on the rug and play with your little guy?
It's my favorite thing to do in life.
Yeah, you can switch on and off.
100%. That has, I've addressed this question in different types of platforms in the past, but maybe in a different type of a way. Look, I think there's a couple things here. I think that the number one thing is that every human has their baseline. I know the type of person that I am. I'm a good person. I'm a loving person. I do what I do not because I'm violent. I don't like violence. I do what I do not because, I have some attitude problem. I do what I do simply because I'm passionate about the actual doing of what I do. I love the chasing and the shooting and the climbing and the going through doors and, and all that stuff. I am driven by my desire to want to stand up for good people in the face of evil. And so the underlying theme, the underlying DNA of everything that drives me is love. And so that's where I am with everything. I walk, if I see a snail, this is the way I've always been. If I see a snail trying to cross the sidewalk and I walk past it, I feel guilty at the thought that somebody might step on it. And I stop what I'm doing. If I'm biking, I stop, I get off, I pick it up, and I go put it across in the grass. That's just always been my passion for life. Look, there's no doubt there are people out there who might be police officers, might be soldiers, might be doctors. I don't know what. They live in a world where they're exposed to the dark side of humanity. They get exposed to the evil that's out there. They get exposed to things that are very difficult to fathom, let alone to see and to remember. And I know that people can be changed by that. I know that I have been changed in many which ways, and a lot of the things that I've gone through in life. I've had my bout with PTSD, which started back in 2012. I have things in my mind that I wish I never saw, while at the same time, things that I have seen that I know allow me to remain calibrated with what my purpose is. I remember when I left my active duty service in the IDF. It was in 2010. I came back to Canada. I wasn't married yet. I wasn't a husband. I had no kids. I wasn't a father. I was just Nir Maman, 30. I think I was 33 years old, something like that. And I right away jumped right back into the line of work. I went to join a SWAT team here in Canada for the province of Ontario. And we had a very, very extensive recruitment process, application process. And a lot of it included very extensive psychological background evaluations. We do these tests that have, 1,000 questions to them, and then you sit for an interview with a psychologist that's several hours long. And I remember this particular psychologist. We were 3-4 hours into this interview. We've gone over my entire life, my personal life, which has a lot of lessons in it, to all my professional life up to that point. And it's all I've been doing since the age of 18, was in the world of serving, protecting, and violence. And I remember her stating to me, she said, I'm very surprised, given everything that you've been through in your life, that you are still so well put together emotionally and mentally. I took that as a great, great compliment. I didn't really know what to make of it, though. I said, I'm thankful, I guess, because even up to that point in my life, I've had friends of mine, I've had colleagues of mine who went as far as ending their own lives because of PTSD, because of a lot of things that, I could never understand. I was never able to understand, like, I know the things that you've seen, the things that you've lived through, but to leave your family, for that darkness to be so powerful that it can make you want to say, I don't want to turn to the light anymore. I want it all to end. I was never, ever able to understand that. To a big degree, where I sit today, I can understand it while I still don't get it. I've gone through a lot more since I was 33 years old, sitting with that psychologist, and I've seen a lot more. And so I'm at the point where I can look out my window and understand what the world is about, and I can understand why somebody who's even a good person, who maybe has had a decent life, doesn't want any more of it. I can understand that, and sitting here today, we will be forever marred with October 7th, and everything that every single one of us, so much as just heard of the stories, let alone had to been there and see things. I have times where I just want to shut my eyes, and I don't want to know of this world anymore. So for me, there's a big part of it that I'm just grateful. I don't have the answer. I don't know what made me different with things that I've been through and things that have affected me so badly in life and have hurt so much that I continued. It was a rough path versus others who have been through similar things and who have not continued. I don't know. I don't know to sit here and tell you what it is. Before I became a husband and a father, I still had a family. I had parents. I had siblings. I had the gift of my life. And, I didn't want to abandon anybody in my life. I also remember thinking to myself that, I have this beautiful gift of life, and it's a one-time thing. And if you abandon it, that's it. As bad, as hurtful, as impossible as something might feel in the moment, if you end it, then you know that you've now kind of married up with that force, and together you've ended it. However, if you just keep going, the sun will rise the next day. Your eyes will open the next day, and you might still be in the same swamp of hell. But if you just keep going, at some point in time, perhaps the path of light will suddenly appear. And then you can be on that path, and you can look back and say, thank you, God. And wow, I made it. There's a little bit of that went through. And then the day came, ironically, I became a husband and a father. And I'll tell you right now that it forced me. The wonders it did for me, every father knows, every parent I know, but just as a father, I'll speak just for fathers. And I know I speak the same for every father out there. The day that you find out you're going to be a father, your DNA changes. It changes. It's such a wonderful thing to experience, and there's never going back from that, And I experienced that, and it was scary at first. All of a sudden you have to mature like to levels you've never been before. There's a lot that comes with it. However, I'll tell you, I thought that it would help me get over a lot of things that I've been through and that I've seen. I thought like a magic wand, it would just make all that go away, and it didn't. In many respects, it amplified. It amplified a lot of my fears and my pains, and why. So I know I've shared this with you in the past. March 19th of 2012, we have an 8-year-old relative in my family that was one of the unfortunate victims who was killed in the jihadist terrorist attack in Toulouse, France, at the Old Torah school. That was kind of the catalyst. The day that happened, that was the catalyst that made life crumble for me. And then all of a sudden it's like this dam that explodes open, and all the stuff that you've seen, that you've experienced, that you've been suppressing suddenly comes out, and you're looking around, you're like, where's all this coming from, you know? But that was an especially difficult situation or incident for me to be able to digest for so many reasons, not just because she was family, Miriam Montenegro, but it was an 8-year-old girl. And he was a child, the most innocent. And I had this fear that overwhelmed me. That was the scariest thing I ever felt, was, you know, God forbid one of my kids, it will never happen to them. And, you know, I had a moment in life professionally. This was after I already became a father. I had several kids, and I went to work for a short period of time for the Jewish community in a security capacity. And this was around 2015, 2016. This was at the height of when a lot of all the terror attacks were taking, the jihadist terror attacks were taking place across Europe. And there was a lot of residual terror threats and attacks that were going on in North America, in the US and in Canada. And I had so many moments, I can't even begin to tell you, so many moments where I'd be sitting at my desk in front of my computer at work, and my stomach would turn inside out. I would get this horrible feeling that I could never understand. And it scared me. And going back to a second, to Miriam, and to that day, March 19th of 2012, I was in Kingston military base, going through training with this new SWAT team that I joined. And we were in the cafeteria. It was lunchtime. And I had my tray of food, and I was walking to my table. And in the cafeteria, the mess hall of this base, they had televisions on the different walls, and the news was always playing. And I remember seeing the headline come up on the screen, on the news screen, saying terrorist attack in Toulouse, France, at a Jewish school in Toulouse, France. And the moment that I read that, my stomach turned inside out. I had this weak feeling in my knees. It was almost like me receiving bad news personally, and I didn't understand it. I mean, I didn't know at that moment. It took me a week before I found out that one of our family member, our 8-year-old family member, was one of the victims. But in that moment, I was overwhelmed with this feeling. And I thought to myself, obviously this is horrible. And I just, it's heartbreaking just on face value. But I thought to myself, okay, you know, there's no way. I have a lot of family in France, huge family in France. I said, there's no possible way it could be. You know, I also have a massive family in Israel, ground zero of terrorism. And we've had close calls, but we've never had a family member who was taken away due to terrorism. Why would it happen in France, so far away from Israel? I said, there's no way. It's probably just this feeling that I have because of my passion for serving and protecting and for life, and I feel horrible. So I would be at work, the Jewish community here, on my desk, and I would suddenly, out of nowhere, get hit with this feeling. I would call my wife. I'd say, baby, I don't know what's going on. I don't like this feeling. There were times where I would tell her, I'm going to get, at that time, Zev was our youngest, and he was at a school in a Jewish neighborhood. And I would tell her, I go, if you're home, I'm going to pick him up. I'm taking him out of school and bring him home. And she would say, go do what you need to do. It's fine. I understand. There were times where, you know, I'm trying to also, you mentioned the word rational, you know, I was trying to rationalize, and I'm like, generally I get these feelings and things don't happen, but I also don't want to be the one who said, you remember I talked about the sixth sense. Every one of us has lived through having a sixth sense, even though we want to deny it. And I don't ever want to be the guy that said, you know, I should have known better because I had a feeling something was telling me that something bad was going to happen, and I ignored it. And God forbid one of my kids gets hurt. So there were times where I would get in my car, I would leave work, I would get in my car, I would drive to my kids' school parking lot, and I would just sit there until the end of school. Just sit there. If there's a terrorist, if there's a bad guy, I want to be the one to spot him. So it took a toll from that perspective. I had times where I asked myself, when Miriam was taken from us, when that incident happened, that suddenly crippled me with PTSD. I was locked away in my bedroom in my condo for 2 months. I wouldn't go out. I'd ignore calls from my family, from friends. It was crippling. And there's times where I would ask myself, if I was a husband and a father when that happened, would I have been stronger? Would I have been able to heal quicker? Would it have shielded me? And then of course I slingshot back to the opposite side of that too. What happens if I went through that while I was a husband and a father and it did worse? And then my wife and kids would have to suffer with me. It's one of those things that it's like I'm grateful. I'm so grateful that I'm not going to say I got over it. You never get over it. In life, we go through life and we go through things and we pick up the scars, the physical scars, the emotional scars, the mental scars. And you have scars that just heal over better and you barely notice them. You have ones that are always there. When you look in the mirror, you always notice them. It's just, you learn to coexist with things that you've been through. And God willing, your life gets filled with a lot more happiness and love that just tends to overshadow the moments that the pain comes up or these memories come up. And so I'm just grateful that things went the way that they did. When I get to sit on the carpet and play with my little ones, I can forget the world. The pain has nowhere to come to. The bad memories have nowhere to seep into. I can sit there and just live in that moment of joy and love and happiness. And parallel to that, it does a lot of, it reinforces a lot to me as well, because I can sit there and keep reminding myself of why I do what I do. For my little one, for the little one of anyone else. This is also, for me, quite early on into this past year's war, I had to turn things off. Literally, I couldn't look at the pictures of the hostages anymore, especially the kids. I didn't want to hear things anymore. Just let me go and do my job. Let me go do what I need to do. I've had nothing but dreams and desires to, be the one to come across every single one of these terrorists and put an end to them, to find these hostages and drag them out of the tunnel and bring them home. But at the same token, it's very difficult for me to even look at the faces, to hear the stories of the families and the kids that went through what they went through on October 7th. Conversely to that, I was a guy who traveled a lot, especially after 9/11. I was between Israel, Canada, and the U.S. a lot. I was doing a lot of running a lot of training for a lot of agencies in the United States, and I was traveling a lot. I was on airplanes a lot, and yeah, I was the guy that all of a sudden, you see a parent with a small child, a toddler, a baby, walking onto the plane. You're like, oh, please don't sit next to me. I want a peaceful, quiet flight, like everybody. And I have very quickly become, the day that I became a father and that DNA shifted in me, I was the guy that when I see a parent board a plane with a baby, give me your baby for the flight. You go sit, relax. I will take care of the baby. Don't worry about it. Conversely, when I hear a child in pain, I hear a child cry, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. I stop everything that I'm doing. If I'm in a mall, if I'm I don't know where, and I hone into that right away to make sure the child is okay. So that's this interesting thing of life. That's just this whirlwind of emotions and experiences and things that I don't have answers for everything. I'm just living in the moment, and I just pray that God can continue to keep me as stable and supported on this journey as he has up to this point in my 48 years of life. I honestly don't even know if I've answered your question. I don't know if I've gone in so many different directions here, but that's the most I can give you right now.
So that thing that stops you from stepping on the snail and or coming back because you passed it and you felt guilty that someone may step on it, versus going into Con Eunice, which you've done a few times,
Mhm.
and doing what you need to do as a soldier. One can only guess that there have been some very aggressive times in there. Is that all you? Does that all come from you? The sympathy for the snail and the ability to be highly aggressive and do what you need to do in Con Eunice?
Let me ask you so I understand. When you say, does that all come from you or from me, what exactly do you mean by that?
What I mean is, I know that feeling about stepping on or almost stepping on a snail, the guilt that comes with it, that poor little thing, that innocent thing. So that's clearly a part of you. You have a very sensitive side to you, to Nir Maman. But you also have extraordinarily aggressive side to you. I need to get this job done. And sometimes that job is to go right to the ends, whatever that happens to be. I'm curious about human behavior as it applies to you. You can be this highly sensitive individual, acutely sensitive, and this is not the first time that you've come to tears in our interviews. You're a very sensitive man, but yet you can go into this destructive environment and you can fit in and you can do what you need to do, and you do it. That's a lot inside one mind and one spirit.
I understand you, and that's an excellent question, and I can offer a few tidbits of insight on that. Number one is, whichever way I'm wired, God wired me the way He wired me. I love good, and I hate evil. I have been teaching this to all my students in all the decades that I teach, especially in Krav Maga, which is it's the being of violence. You know, you can't deal with violence with love, with compassion. If somebody throws you in the water, you better swim. You're not going to be able to walk or just sit there. You're going to drown. If you are facing violence, unfortunately, you better have the ability to be violent as well.
Mm-hmm.
God willing, you know, you can be so skilled or lucky in that situation that the situation can end before anything serious happens. However, the fact of the matter is that violence is this tool. Evil uses it all the time, and they use it for the purpose of harming the innocent. And we don't ask for that. We don't go out and look to be violent, but it's a tool that we have to have in our pocket, because if evil comes to us, or evil turns on another innocent person that we need to protect, that is the tool that you're going to have to use as well. So with that, a lot of people in my position, in my line of work, the amount of violent that they could be is only propped on their passion and respect for life. The more love you have for life, the more passionate you are to protecting others, the more violent you will be able to be, if that makes any sense. You can imagine, if you imagine for a second, imagine a parent who has nothing to do with violence, hasn't learned to throw a punch their whole life, has never thrown a punch their whole life, doesn't like guns, doesn't like war, and they're out there in the world one day with their little child, and evil comes and tries to harm their child. In the majority of cases, that parent will become this, for lack of a better term, I'll say an animal that they themselves probably never knew that they could. You know, I am in a profession where we encounter violence, and we have to have the tools of violence in order to stop the evil that we are trying to stop. So yes, there's a way in which we're trained to do that. When it's with a gun, you learn how to shoot a gun to be accurate, to put an end to another form of evil, or to evil that's in the form of a human being. If your mindset is not willing to accept the reality of that moment, then you're going to fail. You have a lot of soldiers and police officers out there who are very skilled. They have learned how to throw punches. They've learned how to shoot guns. But none of that means anything until you are actually in the real moment. That is when the decision, truth comes out. And you have a lot of soldiers and police officers that freeze, that crumple, that run. Because the reality of the moment, the fear, overwhelms them. If you don't have in your mind that ability to switch on and off aggression and violence, you're going to be ill-equipped when you are facing a criminal or a terrorist who was born with violence, who relishes in violence, and who takes this violence every day and goes out in the world looking for the weakest, most innocent person that they can use this violence on to accomplish whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish. That's when reality sets in, and we don't get to make believe. We don't get to play games. We don't get to, because we have a nice punch or we can shoot accurately, if we are not going to swim properly when we're thrown into the water, we're simply not going to stay afloat. There's a way in which we're trained. And I'll tell you that in the IDF, this is the number one variable that we are so good at. Because you remember that our military, the IDF, is we take kids and we have to very quickly, in the case of regular combat, we have 7 months. In the case of special forces, we have maybe a year and a half to 2 years to take these kids, turn them into men, and from men, turn them into warriors that are going to have to go face violence and defend our nation and our people. We have devised some very unique and some very effective ways at being able to do that. There's a lot of aggression building drills and things that we do, methodologies that we can implement in training that will begin to acquaint the young soldier, with the world of violence and what they need to do, and to be able to use it as a tool. There's nothing wrong with being violent. It's just a matter of being able to know that it's a tool and know when to use it and know when not to use it. That's when you have a problem, is when you have an individual who's got emotional issues, who's got mental issues, who has aggression issues, and whether they know how to, throw a punch or shoot, it doesn't matter, but they don't know to turn it off, or they don't have the ethics to apply it accordingly, contextually, in the right situations for the right reasons. That's where it becomes a problem. And so, I can tell you, listen, I've been in the business of fighting my whole life. I've been in martial arts since I was about 4 years old. I've competed a lot in martial arts, in Taekwondo, full contact Taekwondo. There wasn't a single time in my entire life that I stepped into the ring for a competition and my legs weren't shaking, my knees weren't buckling. I wasn't afraid. I can tell you, this is you're also getting me to come in tune with a couple things here. I'll tell you this. I have been in the field of serving and protecting since the age of 18. I've had many situations where I have come face to face with somebody that I had to stop, a criminal I had to stop, somebody I had to arrest. And many times I was afraid. Almost every time I always had this fear that would suddenly hit me and I'd be shaking. And I was a phenomenal martial artist. I knew how to fight. I was a phenom, but none of that mattered because I knew what was going on inside, Today, when I'm still in this line of work, but as a father, as a husband, for now, 13 years, it's very different. It's very different. If I was in the middle of Gaza and I found myself surrounded by 100 terrorists, I wouldn't blink. My heart wouldn't skip a beat. I would be able to have this conversation within me about, I really hope this is not the end of my time now, but I've been in certain situations since becoming a husband and a father, where if I was in those situations before, I know the emotions I would feel inside, and there'd be a lot of fear. And then in present time, there would be a fear, but it would be more of this kind of cognitive acceptance of, this is a scary situation, and I hope it turns out well for me, but I would know how to regulate that. I would know how to control that, and how to let the entity in me that now needs to survive take control. So, I go back to the scenario that you painted about being with my little one on the carpet playing with toys. That's where I like to be. That's where I feel the best, the safest. But I know how to take pauses from that if I need to deal with the world that I serve in.
Have you ever frozen?
I have. I know that I have, yes. I absolutely have. I absolutely have been in many such situations where I should have acted, and I didn't, because I was second guessing myself. I was mentally or emotionally paralyzed, too afraid to act. So I have. I don't want to go into too much details, only because you know about my personal life. But ironically, many of these situations in which I have frozen and failed to act have been in situations in my personal life, not my professional life. I definitely have had moments in my professional life where I was too afraid and didn't act as soon as I should have. I wanted to wait for backup to arrive, or things along those lines. So yeah, the short answer is yes.
Just a couple more questions. I was talking to Itai Sagi, who is now 26 years old, but at 25, he, October 11th, 4 days after October 7th, he went down with his pluga, with his group of, he called them teammates, soldiers, to go into Gaza. He just learned recently that their mission was to extract hostages. While they were going, their Jeep, their Humvee broke down. So they divided up. There are those who stayed with the Jeep to get it going. There are those who went and they looked for shelter. Some of them went down into a bomb shelter that they found. Others stayed up to protect it. Terrorists came, 8 of them, and they started shooting at the Chayalim. And everybody came out of the bomb shelter and started shooting at them. And Itai told me that he killed 2 terrorists. He almost explained to me how he did it. And a grenade went off shortly afterwards right near him and blew open his neck. And the medic came and he put his hand in his neck and he put gauze in there. And they waited for the 40 minutes for the helicopter to airlift him. But at some point, Itai was obviously in pain and he started yelling. And the medic turned to me, he said, "Tishtok." He told him in Hebrew, he goes, "Shut up." And Nir, I don't know why I'm asking you this question, but it stuck with me. That kind of camaraderie. And I said, "Itai, what was your response?" He said, "I was quiet. I knew what the medic needed at that moment." And I thought about the bond between them, the ability to be there for each other, to have their back, to take the shit that comes their way, no doubt, when you're with a bunch of guys protecting or on the offense. And he was absolutely fine with that. He thought that was the proper behavior of the medic. Do you understand what I'm saying here?
100%. Absolutely. Listen, it's especially in the military, policing as well, but especially in the military, especially in situations such as what we are all going through right now, being at war, being in such a violent war, such a high stakes war. There are many professions out there where the individuals who are in those professions, their safety and their lives could be jeopardized. But the context is very different, and there's absolutely nothing out there that will put you in situations such as these other than being a soldier. And the fact of the matter, when you go through military training, when you go through military combat training, there are only two virtues that your commanders, your instructors, everybody wants to see that you do not let go of. Number one is your determination to accomplish the mission. Number two is your determination to be there for your fellow soldiers no matter what. So when you go through Special Forces selection, right, when we want to be in a special unit, one of the first phases is the selection process. It's anywhere from 3 to 5 days, a grueling 3 to 5 days. You won't sleep for 3 to 5 days. You barely eat, and you are put through just the rigors of everything, mental, emotional, physical challenges to see how you fare. And those are the two things that they want to see. When they tell you drop down, do 1,000 push-ups, I can tell you I can't do 1,000 push-ups. They don't expect you to do 1,000 push-ups. They want to see whether you're going to quit or not, whether you're going to keep on putting every fiber of your being into trying to do the next push-up or not. They want to see when one of your teammates is in trouble, can't finish, falls down, can't drag the weights anymore. Are you going to go and help them, or are you going to think for yourself? Are you going to try to be the number one guy that finishes the finish line each time? And I will tell you, you have kind of this, when in Special Forces tryouts, in Hebrew it's called the gibush, in English it's called selection. You can have selection phases with like 500, 600 soldiers, okay? And you have three kind of general categories that happen. You have the superstars, the ones who are naturally gifted athletes. They're strong, they're fast, they're going to finish everything, they'll always be number one. You have the tail end, the opposite end. You have the ones who it's just not for them. They don't have what it takes, not mentally, emotionally, or physically. Then you have the guys in between, the humans, the regular, average humans. They're given a task, and they stop at nothing until they sweat and they bleed and they cry. They stop at nothing and continue the task as best as they can, and that they will never take a step forward without ensuring that their teammate is with them. The guys, the high school quarterback superstars, those guys rarely ever make it. Those guys will cross the finish line with remarkable times. They will do the 1,000 push-ups, and many times they don't make it, and they don't understand why. And it's because all they did, they were so consumed with being first, with finishing, with being the top of the top, so that they will be noticed.
Yes.
Nobody wants them. They never make it. The guys at the very tail end, if you can't perform properly, how are we going to send you into combat knowing that you just don't have the mind and the heart and the physicality to do it? The ones who are in between there, the ones who maybe can only do, 500 push-ups, and it takes them forever to do it, but they didn't stop. And the ones who, when they're given a time, when the commander says you have 30 seconds to get to that other point while carrying this bucket of sand or whatever the case is, the ones who are struggling in pain and they're running and they are out of time, but they see one of their teammates who fell down, who simply can't, they stop, they go, and they pick them up, and they try to drag them across the finish line, and they come 30 seconds late. Those are the guys that get selected. Mm-hmm. And so it's everything. And when you actually translate that to the work itself, when you are taken with a group of guys, there could be 8 of you guys, there could be 20 of you guys, And the command is saying, you guys are going to go into the heart of Gaza right now. You're going to go into this neighborhood. There's terrorists there. Your mission is XYZ. All you have is each other. You staying alive is not going to be how well you can shoot the terrorist. It's going to be how much you have your brother's back and how much he has your back. That's what's going to keep you guys alive. That is what is going to take out the terrorists at the end of it. And if you're stuck there for hours on end before backup can arrive, you can't give up. It's scary, it's scary. And a lot of thoughts come into your mind. And it's ironic because I've seen situations, not necessarily in Israel, but in my other places where I've served in life, of people in the uniform actually saying, I didn't sign up for this. I got a wife and kids to worry about. And I will say that there are many times where that has to be the thinking. I was a law enforcement officer here in the city of Toronto. I've dealt with people that I would want to come near with a 10-foot pole. I've dealt with situations that, I had to stop and I had to say, listen, this individual clearly has something that if they so much as cough on you, you're bringing that home to your wife and kids. So I've had those situations, and that's one of the things that got me to step out of that profession as a full-time job. It was not the risk of being shot or stabbed. It was the risk of the needless, the dirt of it all, the bringing something really bad home to my family. But I will tell you that among the military community, and I've dealt with a lot of special units from around the world, Canada, US, Europe, Asia, all kinds of different places in the IDF. I've done joint training with them. I've trained them. I know of very, very few, probably I never have come across any actual soldier that has deployed, that has been in battle, has been in combat, that took a step back from what they had to do because of other considerations. To them, they were there for their fellow brothers. If they took a step back, one of their teammates would get killed, and they would not allow that to happen. And quite frankly, if they don't succeed in the mission, that mission, as a soldier at war, your mission is always for the greater good of your country and your people. You fail your mission, you might not find the hostage. You might not rescue the hostage. You fail your mission, you might now allow a group of terrorists to come into Israel and kill more people. You cannot fail. So I very, very much understand what Itai went through, what he was talking about. And that I can tell you, I can attest to you that aside from all the training, that is the natural DNA, especially of somebody who has served in a special unit. That is the natural DNA that you have to come with on day one when you want to try to belong to this unit. And that stays with you for life. It stays with you for life. It's a beautiful thing. It's a very unique thing. And I understand it.
Tell me something. They're making a movie about you?
I don't know. I heard something along these lines.
Yeah. What is that all about?
Okay. So I will, I'll give as much as I believe I'm allowed to give. There's a lot of contractual things that come into play with this. I'll tell you the story. I have spent the last 15 years of my life rescuing people. Okay, so hostage rescue has been my my passion throughout my entire service, all my life. When I served in full-time active duty service, in the IDF, in the counter-terror unit, hostage rescue was my specialty. Our unit was the counter-terror unit, and it's also the counter-terror school, and it's divided up into different sections. And kind of the most elite section is our hostage rescue section. We're in charge of everything related to hostage rescue for the IDF. We create the methodologies. We train all of the hostage rescue units. I was in charge of that. So it's been my passion. And when I got out of service back in 2010, I got brought into a situation where back then, if you would recall, back in the 2006, 2007 era, there was a lot of piracy going on across the shores of Africa. A lot of Al-Shabaab terrorists, maritime pirates or maritime terrorists that began boarding ships and taking them hostage, captive. And they were doing this for ransom. It materialized into a very lucrative kind of application for them, because insurance companies would start to pay out millions of dollars right away. So there's a lot of very well publicized events of these occurrences. And I had a student of mine. She was actually a police officer in the United States, and she found out that I came back home to Canada. I finished my service in the IDF, and she reached out to me and said, "Listen, there's a group of attorneys that are putting together a project." She goes, "I don't have all the details, but I do know it's right up your alley, and they will want you. Give them a call." I said, "Okay." So I reached out to this head attorney of the U.S. Who was representing an actual UN-appointed government body in Somalia, one of the governing regional councils, they were called. And they were dealing with a series of commercial ships that were hijacked by Al-Shabaab and were being held on their shores. And they wanted these ships removed. There were 3 ships, and there was a crew of 13. It was Italian, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was an Italian shipping company. And there were 13 crew members being held hostage on one of the ships. And long story short, and also just kind of avoiding getting into any hot water because of all the NDAs that we had to sign, this particular law firm based out of the US specialized in maritime ship recoveries. And they were officially recruited by a law firm in Africa representing this government body. And they've asked this legal entity in the US to put together the rescue of these ships. So when I came on board, they had a team of about 15 guys, a team of these 15 special operators, all American, that were already selected to carry out the mission, and they had their commanders. And they had room for one more. And they received my resume. They called me right away, emailed me a package of all this legal documents I had to sign. And then we got on a call, and they said, "Listen, your resume is very impressive. I'm sure that you would, you'd be a great added value to the team here. So we'd like to have you on board." I said, "Fantastic." So as the weeks progressed, and there was a lot of components to this, political components and tactical components, government components, a lot of things were being put together. They kept on consulting with me on different tactical related things. What kind of uniforms do you think the guys should be wearing? What kind of equipment? Nir, if you were to carry this out, if you were to handle the whole planning of the operation, how would you do it? And I kept having these conversations with them and giving them, my of course, experience-based opinions, but my opinions on it. And then one day they got back to me and they said, "Listen, we are having some conflicts with the commanders that we have hired to run this operation. These are our U.S. special operations guys, absolutely qualified guys." They said, "But every time they tell us things, we wanted to kind of bounce things off of you because you come from a different world. You specialize in hostage rescue, and you come from a country that obviously has some of the most world-renowned capabilities and experiences with hostage rescue. So we wanted to, first of all, see what your thinking was on it. And also we have a little bit of disagreements, they had with their people, and we kind of want to see where your mind fits into all this." And every time I would give them my assessment on a situation, as they said, it would make far more sense. So eventually they offered me the position to take over as commander of the operation, to plan it all out. This mission, this operation got to the point where it was 60 Minutes, if I remember correctly. It was one of the 2 big investigative news shows, and I'm pretty sure it was 60 Minutes, got wind of it, and they were going to attach one of their main figures and a camera crew to join us on the mission when we go and rescue these ships. Now, long story short, things happened where we weren't able to, we were about to pull the trigger on the operation. The main ship that had the crew on board, the engine broke down, and the terrorists dragged it to shore. And the terrorists had a huge encampment on the shore, and that's why this regional council wanted them out of there, because they couldn't continue on with commerce, and they wanted to build a port, and they couldn't do anything because it was hijacked by Al-Shabaab. So the problem that we had was we were not able to get enough intel to find out what the problem with the engine was, and if it was a problem that once we boarded the ship and we took control of it in the middle of the night, when our engineer, our ship captain, would come with us, his job, one of the teams would escort him right to the bridge, where he would have to fire up the ship and get it moving, get out of there before Al-Shabaab would start to encroach on us. We couldn't get enough intelligence to find out if that problem, that engine problem, was one that could be remedied within 2-3 minutes, or if we would be sitting ducks there. Nobody would be coming to rescue us if we were trapped there. So the tactical operation was put on pause. The insurance company ended up paying the ransom, releasing the crew, and that was the end of that. However, that got me positioned with a number of these legal entities, both in Canada and the US. And every now and again, they would reach out to me saying, listen, we have a situation, we have a client, family member has been abducted, custodial abductions, ransom abductions, all kinds of different scenarios, and the government can't do anything. There's no jurisdiction. The police can't get involved. Can you come and consult and see if there's something that you can do, you can help with? And I've had to date, over the course of the last 15 years, a handful of successful rescue missions, ones that are movie worthy. And every time I would sit and I would, have a conversation with someone, and I would tell them, as much as I could about the mission, they're like, man, somebody's going to make a movie of this. This is unbelievable. Yeah. So how did we get to this point? In this past year of my reserve duty in the IDF, I served between 3 different units. And excuse me, my home unit now that I belong to is a special forces battalion that was put together that is comprised of individuals and teams from all of the IDF's most elite units. It's an incredible thing to be part of. And we had our official, back in May, we had our official 3 weeks formation training, right? You have to go as a new unit. The IDF requires the unit to go through training to get all the check marks and everything that's required. Battalion movements, company drills, shooting, all kinds of things that you have to get the check mark before the IDF can stamp the unit as operational and give it its blessing. Mm-hmm. So we were going through this training. And one of the nights, it was the weekend, it was Friday, coming up on Shabbat, there was a neighboring kibbutz. This base, we were down in the southern Israel. And there was one of the kibbutzim where one of the guys in the unit lived at. And the kibbutz decided to throw this beautiful barbecue evening for all of us to say thank you, to treat us. And so the evening came, we got on the buses, got down to the kibbutz, had such an incredible evening. It was wonderful. And then on the ride back, I ended up sitting beside this gentleman, one of the guys in the team. He's an older gentleman in his 60s, early 60s. Served in one of our elite units for a long time, way back in his day, and he decided to get back into Miluim, into reserve duty. Really nice guy. Amitai was his name, and he's sitting beside me. And so, we never met each other, and we start getting to know each other, with all the questions. And he had a very fascinating background. He lived in the States, lived in South America. And then it gets to me, and I start to explain to him about my service background, but then also my company that I have in Canada. And he says, what does your company do? I said, well, it's kind of complicated to explain. I just call it a security company because it's the easiest way to identify it. But we do training, we do consulting, and we do rescues. What do you mean you do rescues? So I proceeded to explain to him, and I gave him the example of the last rescue project that I did, which we concluded several months before this war started. It was 2 kids, brother and a sister, 8 years old and 10 years old. When it all started, 9 years old and 7 years old, abducted from their mother and taken to a country in Africa, a hostile country in Africa. They were held there for, it took 13 months before we finally were able to snatch them back and bring them home. The story is something else. So I proceed to give him tidbits of it, and he says, unbelievable. I didn't know stuff like this actually, happens like in the private sector and this and that. Anyways, we get back to base and we get dismissed for the weekend, for Shabbat, to go home. Sunday morning, we return back to base. 8 a.m. we have to be with all of our equipment, our gear, and we're starting the training. This was about, I think, 7:45 or something like that. I walk into the tent, and Amitai grabs me, and he says, I got to tell you something. I spent the weekend at a friend's house for dinner. I'm going to give you his name. Go and Google him. He is one of the top producers and directors here in Israel. He's got TV shows. There's a TV show called Tehran on Apple TV. Everybody, it's very popular. Glenn Close is like one of the stars. It's going to its 4th season. He goes, go and research them. And he says, he asked me, so Mitai, how is reserve duty going? At the age of 60, tell me about it. Must be interesting. He says, very interesting. So he proceeds to tell me how he explained everything to him, and then he says, there's a lot of interesting people that I'm serving with, and he brings me up, and he proceeds to tell him, as much of the Africa rescue that I told him. And the guy says right off the bat, he goes, put me in touch with this Nir guy. I got to make a movie about his story and these rescues. Put me in touch with him right now. So Amitai says, look, I wanted to first come see you and ask you if it's okay, if you're interested, I'll connect you. I said, yeah, look, give him my information, and we'll go from there. It sounds interesting. So I turn around, I walk away, I have my phone, and I'm Googling this producer, and things are coming up. I'm like, holy cow, wow. I mean, that's very, very humbling, somebody of this magnitude. And I don't even finish, reading what I pulled up, and my phone rings, and it's him. He goes, listen, how soon can we meet? I go, look, I think at that time we had a week left of the training, and then I was going into Gaza with the second unit that I serve in, right? So I said, I'm gonna be in Gaza. I probably won't be free for about another month or month and a half. He says, as soon as you get out, give me a call, come to our offices in Tel Aviv. We want to sit down and talk. And so that's what happened. A little over a month later, I get out of Gaza, and I had about, my typical week kind of relax, stay in Israel before I fly home. And I called him up. I went to Tel Aviv to sit down with him and his partners, the heads of the studio, and we talked a bit. And they said, look, we'd like to send you a formal offer if you'll accept, and we'll go from there. I said, sure, no problem. I think it was about a week later. I got home to Canada, and I get this contract from them about what they would like to do. And it's either going to be a movie, or it's going to be a series, like a TV series, based on my life story, and specifically revolving around my world of rescues, hostage rescues. It's progressing. I had to have a lawyer step in and obviously go over everything. I mean, I spent 30 years in the movie TV business, doing a lot of consulting on different shows, and every now and again getting a military or police role and stuff. But this is the first time I've ever entertained, such an offer. It's called a life rights deal, and there's a lot to it. I mean, going forward, it's like if I fall down and scrape my knee, I got to first run it by them if I'm allowed to talk about it publicly.
Yeah, it's one of those.
They have to have exclusivity to every single thing, so that whether it's Netflix, Apple TV, I don't know who's gonna pick it up, but that's where we're at. I'm very, very to what I'm looking for. I mean, I'm excited at the opportunity to present a lot of these stories. There's a lot that goes on out there. We've dealt with a lot of rescues related to the sex trafficking industry, which is rampant worldwide. There's just so much awareness that has to be brought to all these things. And so, I'm not going to be starring in the movie. I can also, look, let's look at the situation that we're facing now as Jews. This is, the character that will portray me is not going to be Israeli. So I mean, not the actor who's going to portray me. I mean, the actual character in the story is not going to be Nir Maman Israeli, and maybe not even Jewish. And why? I was so shocked when I had heard of of what was going on. When I sat down with them, and they were explaining to me that, listen, they work with all the big producers in Hollywood, Netflix, the streamers, Netflix, and Apple TV and what have you. And all of Hollywood doesn't want to entertain anything that has anything to do with Israel. That Israel has any type of, it doesn't have to be about Israel. But if you have an Israeli production company, you have an Israeli-based story, a lot of that's been getting boycotted. And so they have to make these adjustments to the story where I'm probably not even going to recognize, my own character in the situation. It's very heartbreaking. It's angering to see that this is where the world is at.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But that's where it's at. That's where it's at right now.
Tough.
Thank you. Thank you. Things are in progress, and I'll keep you posted, of course.
I think The Rock will be the actor. What do you think? You think The Rock? Nir, you think The Rock would represent you well? What do you think?
Listen, it's I joke about that because I've had situations in my life where I guess, especially when I was more in my bodybuilding moments, I've had people like stop me, say, "Man, you look like The Rock." I go, "Well, it's because we're cousins, right?" Serious? No way, And I get crowds of people following me around everywhere, and so that might be a good one. That might be a shoe-in.
So in conclusion, as you know, I've been playing around with artificial intelligence, and I ask artificial intelligence very often to write up a poem about my guests. So I have one here for you today, and it's called For Nir Maman, Soldier and Son. All right. I'm going to read it to you in 1 sec. But before I do that, I want to ask you 3 or 4 semi-automatic questions. Boom, boom, boom. You tell me quickly your answers. Okay. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
To be more patient.
Oh, you're not patient?
I don't know. I think I still have. I think that's still something I need to work on a little bit. Yes.
Huh. Savlanut. What do you consider your greatest achievement in life?
My family.
Yeah, by far, right?
Yeah,
by far. Where would you most like to live?
Sun and beach.
Where?
Where there's sun and beach.
Oh, where there's sun and beach.
Yes.
I think you should live in Israel, but who's asking me? What do you most value in a friend? Last question.
Loyalty.
Of which you give back, right?
Absolutely.
So the poem's called For Nir Maman, Soldier and Son, and it goes like this. In Toronto streets, the city hums. A world away, the sirens drum. But there's a man with heart so wide who answers when his country calls, despite the tide. 6 times since October's fateful dawn, he's donned the green when others mourn. A soldier, yes, though years have passed. A 48-year-old heart steadfast. The distance hums, but duty's clear. A bond that stretches year to year. From distant shores, he hears the cry of those in need, of those who die. In quiet rooms of Toronto streets, he gathers strengths in silent beats. Yet when the call comes sharp, profound, he stands with pride on hallowed ground, not bound by age, not bound by fear. He stands for something we hold dear. A man, a soldier, a son, a friend. To Israel's call, he will ascend. 6 times he's left the life he knows to face the fire where danger grows. And through the world, though the world may seem far apart, his love for home beats in his heart. So here's to Nir, a name of might, a soul who answers in the night. May you find the peace you seek in Rome until your soul is safe back home.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I wasn't expecting that.
It's nice, isn't it? You have a lot of attention on you. You're so lucky. You're not alone, huh?
Look, there's, I have a lot of people in my life. Yes. That's one of these questions that I keep answering, and it's layer after layer after layer. Look, do I have a lot of attention? I do. Is there a lot of good attention? There's a lot of good attention. There's also a lot of bad attention. I've forced myself to step back, for example, from social media when all of these anti-Israel, anti-Semites took over the world of social media and started attacking my wife and my kids. So, yeah. Short answer is yeah. I'm not alone. I have a lot of attention.
I'm really happy to be back together with you and to do this interview. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you.
Oh, I always enjoy it so much. And
Me
you
too.
always look tired at the end of it, and I think that's a success of mine.
I'll tell you, this has been my longest stretch home. I've been home for 2 months.
Yes.
This entire past month, I was in the U.S. on my duties, my sheriff's office down there. But I'm feeling it. I haven't had a moment to really take a break, and I'm feeling it on my body. I'm tired. I'm in pain. It's
of course.
Feeling my age.
So thank you for doing this, especially then. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you.
And in regards to Simone and your children, and you should have a Nesiya Tova, a very safe trip to Israel.
Thank
and
you.
as I always tell you, Nir, and I hear it from so many of our listeners, thank you. Thank you for doing what you do for us. Honestly, people watch your interviews and they say they feel a little bit safer in the world and a little bit safer as a Jew. So thank you for that.
I cannot begin to tell you how much that fills my heart to hear that and what it does for me. I cannot begin to put into words. And so I thank each and every one of you. Thank you.
Kol hakavod. All the power to you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching and for listening. Take out of this interview what you can. And I think the most important thing that you can take away from it is diligence, is perseverance, it's courage and bravery. Nir has worked long and hard over his life to get where he's at. Now they're making a movie about him. Who could imagine? What a beautiful thing. So if you're trying to find your zone, here's a good interview to start with, because it seems to me that Nir has done that beautifully. So until we meet again, as they say in Yiddish, sei gesinnt. Do you know what that means, Nir? Sei gesinnt?
What do you translate it?
Your Yiddish sucks.
My Yiddish, I'm telling you, I grew up with Zeigazint, We say when somebody sneezes, bless you,
So I interviewed Bob Ray, the ambassador, Canada's ambassador to the United Nations. That's what he thought. I said, Zeigazint, do you know what it means? And he says, oh, that's like when you sneeze. I go, no. It's the same family. And he's going good health. Go in good health.
Thank you.
Thank you so